Hey, what's going on? Luke here, and we are doing my review for round 11 of the 2021 NRL season. Now, this week, I would say is not as controversial as last week. Obviously, last week, a hell of a lot of sendings off and sin binnings and suspensions as a result of it. This week, I feel it was a lot better. There wasn't as many blowouts, even in terms of the actual season as a whole so far. There's been so many blowouts. There's been very, very little sort of close games. And in this round, obviously, we saw a game go to Golden Point. It wasn't a very good game, but we saw a Golden Point game. We saw a couple of games that were a few points in it. Obviously, we did get a couple blowouts as well. A lot of blowouts, actually. But it was just nice to see some competitive games for once, because it hasn't really happened too often this season. So plenty of stuff to talk about. Let's not waste any more time with this intro. Let's get into the reviews. So the first game of the round saw the Cowboys defeating the Knights 36-20. For me, the Cowboys were always sort of in control. I know Tamalalo got sin bin, and I think Lachlan Burr got sin bin as well. And then the momentum sort of changed. But the Cowboys, they started off very strong. They finished strong. And the Knights, they're just that sort of side. They're sort of getting close. They're getting close, but just without Ponga, without Pearce, they're just missing that little bit of class that they would have if those guys were playing. And it's quite obvious if you take a player of sort of Ponga and Mitchell Pearce's caliber out of a side, any team's going to struggle unless you're like the Melbourne Storm, because they're not struggling at the moment and they're missing players that are probably better. But the Cowboys, they're sort of flying at the moment. They're sort of going under the radar, because I feel like every team's going under the radar unless you're Penrith or the Storm. But look, I feel like they're a side that they're not really good enough to trouble any of the actual good sides. But against these sort of sides who are similar sort of ability, like the Knights, I think the Cowboys, they'll either win or they'll be right in it to the death. And that's exactly what they did this game. They smashed the Knights. And although the scoreline sort of suggests it wasn't close, it definitely was close at times. Obviously, Knights came back, but the Cowboys, they were just too strong. As soon as Tamalalo comes back into that side, they're just a whole different side. I mean, I'm not going to go as far as to say they're like Tom Trbojevic, but it definitely adds a lot of fire to that forward pack, because you look at the forward pack individually, you look at the players, and you go, yeah, not really, there's no real superstars or anything, especially now that Josh Maguire's not there, and all the guys that they did sign on big contracts, like your Jordan McLean's, definitely haven't delivered. But Jason Tamalalo, he is someone who has been delivering on his contract. You add in that Scott Drinkwater, he's come to fine form this year. I think he's been pretty good in the halves. Obviously, the actual halfback position has been a bit of a toss-up between who's actually going to be playing there. But Drinkwater, he's been a mainstay this year, and I think he's been really, really good. Causes a lot of headaches for next year, considering they've signed Dearden and obviously Chad Townsend as well on big money. So where does Drinkwater fit into this? I'm not sure. I think he's got to stay 5'8". He's definitely good enough to be 5'8". And the fact that the other position he can play is fullback, and I think Valentine Holmes is finally finding his feet. Scored a try this week. Thought he looked really good. He's starting to look a bit slick. Just supporting in the middle. He's just doing a lot of good things now. So it's good to see Valentine Holmes back. But yeah, in terms of the Knights, it was an understrength side. So them losing this one isn't exactly a surprise. Pretty sure I tipped the Cowboys. So 1-from-1 to start off the round. But yeah, I think this one was expected. I think a lot of people saw this coming. Now on a Friday night, it was the Warriors defeating the Tigers 30-26. I feel like this game, obviously this was another one where it got really tight at times. Obviously Tigers and Warriors sort of going back and forth. Tigers scored right at the end to sort of make it a bit of a contest. Even nearly scored in the corner. Obviously a pretty poor pass in the end, or just a pretty poor play in the end, which resulted in the ball going over the sideline. But look, they did have a chance to snatch the victory, but I think the Warriors did have a deserved victory. Now, if you're a fan of the channel as a whole and not just the reviews and the predictions and that sort of stuff, you would have seen that I did a video on Reece Walsh. So I was super impressed with how he played. So I'm not going to go into too much detail about this game, in the sense that you can just go back and watch that one, because Reece Walsh was absolutely fantastic. He was so electric. I know he had some moments where he wasn't brilliant, even in terms of the first try, where he sort of left it. He should have definitely either just grabbed it or thrown a dead ball line or done something with it. But I think the positives definitely outweigh the negatives by a long shot, and he looks absolutely fantastic. And even the fact that like Roger Tuivasa-Sheck can go to the wing and have such an impact on the wing, it just shows you how valuable wingers are these days. Because Roger, although not playing wing for years and years and years, since his Roosters days pretty much, went straight to the wing and had an immediate impact as well, because that allows Reece Walsh come in at fullback, plays natural position, and also you can get effectiveness from Roger Tuivasa-Sheck as well, which I honestly thought when they were saying, oh, Tuivasa-Sheck's going to play wing, I was like, what are they doing? But it's actually been a bit of a masterstroke. The Tigers, though, once again, losing a game that they probably should have won. This is one of those games that I think at the end of the season, they'll look back and say, look, a 4-point ball game, we could have definitely won that one. I will say I don't think Moses Mbye has been that bad at 5'8". I know he's probably going to get a lot of haters in the sense that, like, we know Moses Mbye hasn't lived up to the contract, but in terms of him actually playing as just a straight 5'8", I thought he was actually pretty decent, and he hasn't really played 5'8" that much at the Tigers, despite that. For me, I think that's his best position. He's always been a 5'8", and they've tried to slot him in other positions to try and just make it work to get him in the side and get the best players into the side, rather than where does Moses Mbye best fit. Obviously, they tried him at fullback, centre, halfback, 5'8". But for me, watching him at the Bulldogs, he was always a 5'8" for me. And that's exactly where he's playing now. And he had a nice little short ball. Luke Garner's, he's one of those guys who I feel like he's underrated, but also like rated spot on, I guess. He's not like an absolute gun, but he does a great job for the Tigers. Scored a couple of tries on the weekend. And yeah, look, the Tigers, they got very, very close. But yeah, like similar to the Knights, just missing that lack of class. And for the Knights, they're missing actual players due to injury. Tigers just don't have the players. They've got guys like Luke Brooks who are playing week in, week out. So they might pick up a couple of wins here and there if they just come up against a team who's not really on and they actually put it on. But look, the Tigers, they're not a fantastic side. You look at their just them as a squad, they don't look fantastic, let alone them actually playing on the park. So, look, Warriors, I think it was a deserved win for them despite the scoreline looking so close. But look, it was good to see another competitive game and one actually going down to the wire. Now, moving on to the rivalry game, it was the Sharks up against the Dragons. A 1-point ball game, a 13-12 victory to the Cronulla-Sutherland Sharks. Obviously, another one that went down to the wire. Just talked about the previous one. This one literally went down to the wire. This one was a golden point win. Chat Townsend kicking the field goal. But I just want to say, I was going to do a video on this and I sort of backed out on it. But Chad Townsend, what a terrible signing he's going to be for the Cowboys. They signed him in big money, and I saw nothing that this game. I know he kicked the field goal, but there was so many chances. Like Corey Norman, I don't know how he missed. I honestly don't know how he missed. He had so many chances from right in front. He's kicked field goals in the past. He's not a bad field goal kicker, and yet he missed like 3 or 4 chances, I'm pretty sure. So the Dragons, I think them losing this was more so them losing it rather than the Sharks actually winning it. Because like I said, Townsend, like, he got the field goal in the end, but he did not play good overall. He was absolutely terrible. The Sharks in general weren't very good, although there was lots of injuries and stuff in this game. So, look, the Dragons lineup going into the game, they were signing players just to make up numbers in their squad. So they're definitely got a rocky road ahead of them in terms of injuries and suspensions and such. But coming against the Sharks, if Sharks are going to win any game, it would have been this one. Like I said, Dragons definitely under strength. And look, the Sharks, they didn't really miss too many players. So for them, I think Moylan and Townsend, I think Moylan's the more dominant half, which sounds crazy considering he's a 5'8". I wouldn't even really consider him a half. He's just a fullback who plays half because he can't play fullback anymore. But Townsend, for me, I don't know what he actually offers to this side. And like I said, it sounds dumb because they ended up winning because he kicked the field goal. But any good half up against this Dragon side would have got their team into like a good lead where they wouldn't have to kick a field goal. That's kind of my point of it. But look, maybe things are going to change at the Cowboys. Maybe things are going to change at the Sharks. But yeah, I think for the Sharks, I think it's going to be good for them to not have Chan Townsend in the side. And I'm just really going in on Townsend, but I was so disappointed with him. And he has so much potential to sort of step up, and he should be stepping up. This is where he's hitting his peak, but he's not really hitting his peak. I don't understand what's happening. Maybe he sort of hit the wall or something at the Sharks, needs to change his scenery, but yeah, it's just not been good for him this season. Just on the Dragons, though, I just wanted to point out that I thought the effort was really, really good. Obviously, a lot of talk at the moment about the whole Jack Bird in terms of him crying in the sheds and such. And there's been a lot of people who have been supporting. There's been a lot of people who have been saying how it shouldn't be happening. But for me, it's like, if he's emotional, it shows that he actually cares, and I find that's better than watching the players having a laugh and shaking hands after the game, after they've just lost by 1 point, or they've just been towed up. That's the thing that actually shits me. I know people talk about players being humans and such, but, I mean, the fans are humans too. You're watching it, and you're like, I don't understand. How are they showing no emotion? And then Jack Bird shows emotion, and people are like, why is he showing emotion? It's just, I don't know. I thought Jack Bird's actually been quite good for them. I thought he was good this game. I thought the Dragons as a whole, they showed a lot of effort, like the McAuliffe was charging down. They did stop a lot of chances, even into the lead-up of the Sharks actually kicking the goal. But like I said, this is definitely a winnable game for the Dragons. Corey Norman should have kicked it 2 or 3 times, and he didn't. So that's really all it comes down to. Townsend took his one chance. He got it. Corey Norman didn't. Now, moving on to Super Saturday. I wish I wasn't, because the first game I'm starting to talk about is the Gold Coast Titans defeating my Canterbury-Bankstown Bulldogs 30-20. This is a game I feel like Titans fans would be really disappointed in, and just based on social media, they are very, very disappointed. Now, I was watching the game, and I was sitting there, and at no point did I ever really feel the Bulldogs are actually going to win this one. However, they're staying close enough that you're like, oh, just a couple calls go our way, and then who knows what will happen. But obviously, the calls didn't really go our way. Both teams had a sin bin, and I think both teams took advantage of the sin binning. So it wasn't really like, oh, well, the Bulldogs got a sin binning that was undeserved, and Titans took advantage of it, and then same thing for the Titans. It was kind of a tit for tat. It both happened. Both teams took advantage. For me, the Bulldogs, they're just missing a hooker. They're definitely missing a hooker. The halves are a bit iffy, but the hook position is the main one. And Sione Katoa is suspended next week. So I think that's a good thing going forward for the Bulldogs. In terms of the effort's definitely there. It's something that's been there for the last couple of seasons. And then at the start of the season, I was like, maybe the effort's not quite there compared to what it had been. But they're slowly getting back to it. And I don't really know where the Bulldogs go in terms of team selections because they don't really have a lot to work with. But for the Titans, though, I think you'd be very disappointed the fact that, similar to last week, I said any team that really plays the Bulldogs like the Raiders, they should be winning by like 30. And instead, the Bulldogs are getting into a scrappy little game with them and sort of bringing teams down to their level. And it's happened with the Titans, in my opinion. Titans started off pretty strong. Obviously, they tried, I think it was Brimson scored first. But look, they're just missing that go forward without David Fifita. And I said without him playing, I think this would really make or break the Titans. I think this is showing just how far off they are from the top teams. And I'm not even talking about like Penrith and Storm. I'm more talking about the Eels and such. Because Titans, like if they want to be even competing with the Storm and Penrith, they need to be able to be at the caliber of, say, like an Eels and be able to put an absolute beat down the Bulldogs, regardless if David Fifita is there or not, or any other players. They need to be able to just interchange a couple of players and still be able to win. And although they did win this game, this was against the Bulldogs, so they should have really absolutely put a thumping on them, and it didn't happen. And it was even a home game for them too. So everything sort of adds up. The fact that the Titans should be disappointed. At the same time, I'm a Bulldog supporter, and I'm disappointed because I think this game was there to be won. And like I said, it never really felt like the Bulldogs were going to win it. But just even at the end there, it was a couple of chances, and Titans ended up scoring the try to seal the game. So this one was definitely a close game. This is what I mean by there was quite a few close games. Even the scoreline says 10 points, but Titans scored right at the end and then just wrapped up the game. So yeah, Titans, very disappointing performance from them. Also, pretty disappointing from the Bulldogs too. It wasn't a great performance despite the scoreline. However, look, it was one of the better performances for the Bulldogs, as weird as it sounds. It wasn't great, but also wasn't the worst. So yeah, I don't know really what to say with both of these sides because both of them weren't very good. But look, it was an entertaining game. Now we move on to probably the upset of the round. It was the Broncos defeating the Roosters. The score was 34-16, and to be honest, the scoreline definitely reflects the game. Now I know the Roosters had little flurries at time. They even hit the lead. James Tedesco tried to carry them. He tried to do what Tom Trbojevic did last week for Manly and just decimate the Broncos side, but he couldn't do it. He just couldn't do it single-handedly. Probably the worst game Sam Walker's played of his NRL career so far, which is ironic considering the other day I was talking about how he's been so good for the Roosters and he's going to be good going forward. Then he comes out and produces that. His little cutout pass, they're talking about, teams have found him out, but the little cutout pass he did that ended up getting intercepted, it was just a bad pass. He just threw it straight to him. If he actually executed it, probably would have scored, but definitely wasn't a good performance for Sam Walker. And the Broncos, they were just up for it. Pengai Jr. has been huge since he's come back into this lineup. And I think as soon as he came back into the side, he just added that little bit of fear, that little bit of mongrel. I know he has the tendency to do some dumb shit, but all of a sudden in one game, pretty much, he's gone from sort of, at the start of the season or last year, whatever it was, they were talking about Pengai Jr. getting sacked because he keeps doing dumb shit off the field, and then he gets suspended on the field too. But this year he's actually been quite consistent. He's been pretty calm, and he's been playing really, really well, and he just adds that fire to the Broncos forward pack. Then everyone else lifts around him because he gets in, he'll drive a player back, and then other players are like, hell yeah, let's go, and then they sort of get up for it. And I think Pengai Jr. leads from the front in that aspect. But yeah, fantastic performance from the Broncos. And I think it was really nice to see Albert Kelly returning to the NRL and actually playing quite good. So yeah, for the Broncos, I think good signs for them. I never really thought that they had the squad that was a wooden spoon side, but they were sort of playing like it. But all of a sudden, in the last couple of weeks, they've really stepped it up a notch, and all these players who've had potential are starting to show it and actually putting it all together on the field. So it's really nice to see. Whether that's because of the new halves pairing, I don't really know. Obviously, they've gone through quite a few halves with Milford and Gamble, and they're even still getting flogged in some games. But you can just definitely see the improvement is there compared to last season. Because last season, they're absolutely abysmal, and this season, the squad isn't that much different, and yet they're playing a lot better, and they took it to the Roosters. The squad is definitely decimated, but at the same time, they've been beating a lot of other teams, and for me, I was looking at them and saying they're still going to be a top 4 side, and I still think they probably will be, but I don't know, is this the game that Sam Walker got exposed? Maybe going forward, he won't be as good, won't be as effective, and his confidence will be drained. I don't really know, but look, it wasn't good times for the Roosters, but it definitely was for the Broncos. A fantastic win for the Broncos. Also, want to point out, it was an away win for them too, which I think is a big one, because they don't really win away from home very often. In fact, they don't even win at home very often, so them winning away against the Roosters, that is a big, big win. Down to the last game of Saturday, probably the one I saw the least of. It was the Storm beating the Raiders. Now, I was sort of getting updates, I had it on in the background, but the Storm, they ended up winning convincingly. When I was watching it, the Raiders were winning, and I was like, oh, this is sort of going to be a great game. But at the same time, I had in the back of my head, yeah, this Storm side, it's pretty much, like their whole spine is pretty much their second-rate players. You had Cooper Johnson there, you had Nico Hines, you had Chris Lewis, you also had Brandon Smith there. I know he's played a lot, but he is the backup hooker essentially, despite him playing most of the season due to Harry Grant's injury. But you take out the fact that their whole spine was literally out, and they still came out and absolutely flogged the Raiders. I don't know if that's a reflection of the Storm. Well, obviously it reflects well on the Storm, the fact that they won, but I think this also reflects so poorly on the Raiders and just shows how far they've actually dropped. Because a couple seasons back, when the Storm had Cameron Smith, they had all their big guns, the Raiders were giving it to them, beating them. I think this was one of the sides that the Raiders seemed to beat every time. Just had the wood on them. And then they come out here, home game for the Raiders, and they get absolutely towed up in front of their home fans against a second-rate Storm side. Like I said, it really, really shows on the Raiders. I know Jack Whiten didn't play, and they are missing a lot of truth themselves, the Raiders. However, this is just one that, if you ever want to take on the Storm, this would be the time to do it. The whole spine's out. How do you get beat 34-10? I don't understand that. Especially when you had a 10-point lead too. It's just like, I know the Storm, they're absolutely brilliant, fantastic side, but the fact that they just had so many players out and so many important players out, and even their second, third string players came in and they absolutely killed the Raiders. It was crazy to see. It just shows you how good the Storm are, and it kind of shows you how much better the Storm and Penrith are compared to all the other sides. Because I thought the Raiders would be right up there in the top four, but even if you put the second string side up against, I don't know, your Eels and the Raiders and the guys you would expect to be around the top four, I think they still give them a hiding too. So yeah, this competition is definitely a weird one at the moment. But yeah, Raiders definitely, they're just something's wrong there. I can't really put my finger on it, and I say it every week, and I think everybody says it every week. Something's wrong with the Raiders. I think it's just a Ricky Stewart thing. I think the players just have lost the motivation. And I don't know how you fix it other than Ricky Stewart moving on, but I don't think that's going to happen. And there's a lot of players to move on if they're not motivated. So we'll see what the Raiders do going forward. But for Melbourne, they're absolutely flying at the moment. Now moving on to Sunday, probably the most shocking game of the round. I thought this one was going to be a close one, but a 56-12 win for the Penrith Panthers over the South Sydney Rabbitohs. It was played in Dubbo, Matt Burton's home stadium, and he put on a show. He was really, really good right from the get-go. The first touch of the game, put a nice little left foot step on, went through the middle, didn't end up scoring from it, but a couple of plays later, Nathan Cleary goes over, and right from then you're like, yeah, all right, Penrith are on, Rabbitohs not so much. But I kept expecting, even when Penrith sort of got, into the 20s, into the 18s, I was like, Rabbitohs at least going to have a bit of a comeback, at least make this game competitive. Even when they went over and scored in the corner, Latrell Mitchell was all fired up. So it wasn't like the Rabbitohs weren't trying and they didn't care. It's just the fact that Penrith just came out so strong and just blew them off the park. Kind of reminded me of the grand final. Just nothing the Rabbitohs could do. Everything that they tried to do, they ended up stuffing up, and Penrith would just scoring at will. And it pretty much just continued on in the second half, as you can tell by the scoreline. Where that's the difference. Where the grand final last year, Penrith switched on, whereas the Rabbitohs here, it just didn't happen. The Rabbitohs just couldn't do anything. And this was pretty much the full strength Rabbitohs side, just getting absolutely towed up by the Penrith Panthers. So it's very scary signs for the Rabbitohs. That's twice that they've had 50 put on them. They're already talking about the fact that they couldn't win a premiership statistically when the first 50 happened, and now it's happened again. So I think you can definitely put a line for the Rabbitohs. Probably going to do a video on them going forward in terms of what happens after Adam Reynolds leaves, because they aren't winning the premiership this year. I think it's Penrith or Storm. It's definitely going to be one of them. Rabbitohs, I thought, were a chance. At the start of the season, Latrell Mitchell was playing fantastic, but he came back in, didn't really have much of an impact. And I think even just psychologically, the fact that Penrith had just beat them by so much and beat them so easy, it literally looked like they were playing a reserve grade side. That's how easy it was for Penrith. And I think the scoreline definitely reflects that. But when you're watching it, it was literally like Penrith were just like, oh, well, we'll see if we can get Burton a try. It's just like whoever they decide they want to score, they were like, well, we'll just see if he can score. And then he was scoring. So definitely a top-notch performance from Penrith. And it's exactly what they needed, because I think everyone had their question mark of like, oh, when's Penrith going to lose? The Rabbitohs coming up, this is going to be the game. And then they just come out and just absolutely annihilate the Rabbitohs. And I think it definitely kills off all those question marks of, oh, well, when are they going to lose? Or are they too cocky? Or they're not as good? They just got an easy draw. Nah, there's no easy draw here. They are just that good. Speaking of good teams, moving on to the last game of the round, it was the Manly-Warringah Seagulls defeating the Parramatta Eels 28-6. And for me, this game was already decided before the game actually started. Going into the game and doing tips and such, I was looking at this game. I think I tipped Manly, but I thought it was going to be a real close one. And then the news of Bob Fulton passing away in the morning, I was like, yep, Manly going to win this one. I went on to Sportsbet. I put Manly in there. They were big underdogs too. I think they were like $2.75. I think at one point they were $3, which seems crazy considering the teams and the form of the teams. The Eels, they've been winning, but they haven't been winning that well or that convincingly. Like, there's never been performances from the Eels, apart from all the way back against the Storm in round 2, whatever it was. apart from that game, all the wins that they had have either been scrappy or something lucky's happened, or they haven't really been that entertaining to watch, or just things like that. Whereas Manly have been putting a show on every week. Tom Trbojevic has come in, been fantastic. Cherry Evans been very good for him. I think it mostly came down to the fact that Kieran Foran was out, and then Cade Cuss was going to come in. He went down injured. Schuster moved to 5'8", sort of last minute, I guess, and he was fantastic. I think 5'8" is his position. He's been playing second row purely because Kieran Foran's there, but he stepped in that 5'8" position, and he definitely didn't look out of place. He looked really, really good. Set up a couple of tries. Just the fact that he's a big body too, I think that is the modern day 5'8", or the modern day half in general. You need a guy who's a big body and is able to handle himself in defence, and even just take on the line, especially with all these 6 to go calls. If you can just get a 6 to go and just go straight at the line and just take advantage of the quickness of the game, I think you'll be in a pretty good position going forward, and that's exactly what Manly are doing. They've got guys like Tom Trbojevic. He was just taking hit-ups yesterday. He's getting the ball and nothing was happening, so he just run as hard as he could straight at the gap, and he's not obviously going to get through the gap all the time, but just the fact that he has that, I don't know, the mentality of like, all right, I'll just tuck the ball under the wing and just go and make these meters, take what's on offer, rather than like you get some of the fullbacks get the ball and they're like, oh, well, maybe I'll just, skip across field and see if something happens, and then they get driven back. Whereas Tom Trbojevic is just like, nah, stuff this, give me the ball, I'm getting this going forward. Even the fact that he was, I think it was Paseka, they went through the hole and he ended up copping, like Paseka copped an earful from Tom Trbojevic, and rightly so. They went straight through a gap where he should have been, but it just shows you the mentality of Manly at the moment. This isn't a Manly side that's just happy to be winning or happy to be in the position they're in. They're a side that wants to win this premiership, I reckon. I reckon that they want to compete with Penrith and the Storm, and if there's any team who's capable of doing it, I think at the moment Manly is the only one who could step up to that level. And you might be thinking, well, the Eels are up there, the Eels are in the top 4. We just saw this game. This is exactly what I've been saying about the Eels. They've been winning, but they haven't been winning impressively. Manly have, and Manly came out and absolutely smashed the Eels. And I know you can say all of the passion in the world behind them and every reason for Manly to come out and win this game, but we saw a couple of weeks ago, West Tigers were in a similar position where a club legend died. I know Bob Fulton is probably even on another level for Manly in terms of just the game in general. He's loved by so many people. I know he's my dad's favourite player growing up, so he definitely had a big impact on the NRL in general. So there are probably a lot of players who've grown up knowing about Bob Fulton and wanted to be fired up for this game. But like I said, it doesn't always translate on the field, but this time definitely did. You could just see Tom Trbojevic was not going to let Manly lose. You probably add in that Cherry Evans and such were probably doing the exact same thing. And honestly, it didn't look like Manly were going to lose. There was no point in the game where I thought Eels were going to make a comeback. All I was thinking was, wow, the Eels look really, really bad this game. So yeah, like I said, going forward, I think the only 3 teams who can win, well, mainly the 2, Penrith and the Storm, mainly Penrith. The Storm, even they haven't really... They've been really, really good, but they've only been good at times, where Penrith have just been consistently the top side. They've looked untouchable. They've never looked like they were going to get beat, where Storm have been beat by the Eels, funnily enough. But the Eels, I don't see them even competing with these top 4 sides. Oh, sorry, they'll make the top 4, but in terms of actually winning the premiership. But Manly, I think they are capable of making a grand final, making a run for the grand final anyways. Those are my thoughts on round 11. Leave in the comment section below what were your thoughts on round 11. A little bit less controversial, so let me know. What are your thoughts of the rule changes? I thought they refereed it a lot better. There were times where, last week they definitely would have sent them off or sin bin them. This time they gave them a warning. I think this is more like it. I think they I'm not going to say they nailed it, but I think it was a lot better. So let me know in the comment section below what your thoughts of the referees, what your thoughts of individual performances. Let me know. Also, while you're at it, if you happen to enjoy this video, make sure you go ahead and leave a like on it and subscribe to the channel if you're new around here. Also, turn on the notification bell. It's super important in terms of you actually seeing the video. We all know the sub boxes, they're pretty dodgy, so don't rely on them. Use the notification bell and be notified immediately that I've uploaded. Also, go ahead and give me a follow on social media. It's on the screen right now. It's Mr. Luke and YT. Facebook is just Mr. Luke, but everything else is Mr. Luke and YT. So go ahead, give me a follow, give me an ad, do all that sort of stuff. And stay tuned for more content on the channel. Plenty of stuff to talk about. I'm probably going to talk about the Rabbitohs next. So stay tuned for more content, and I'll see you in the next video. See yous!